stuff. Frankly, in 2026, I think most of us are going to realize that most of the stuff AI can generate is cheap, right? The code is cheap, the design is cheap. It's not super relevant until someone with some kind of taste, creativity, someone who's in touch with the domain or the world that they're in to where they can add their own spin of taste to it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a granularity tutorial video, how to monologue, whatever you want to call it. Today we're going to talk about something more abstract that I think is pretty important. And it's nothing super technical, but it is or can be something complicated. It can be something that could come really natural to others or could come where you have to cultivate it and nurture it for a while before you can have this particular concept. And that concept or topic is called taste. Now, the reason why taste is going to be important in the year 2026 is because even though there are so many tools that can create AI products, right? Lovable, Replit, Codex, Claude Code, all these tools that's able to create AI applications, AI products, boost productivity, whatever it may be. Just because you're able to create something doesn't mean it can attract the masses. It doesn't mean it can attract a consumer base. It doesn't mean it can attract users. I think in 2026, it's going to be the time where we finally figured out what works and what doesn't. I think since probably 2022, when I think it was fall of 2022, when ChatGPT officially came out, I think I didn't start using ChatGPT often until maybe the spring of 2023. But from 2022 to present, it has definitely been an experimentation to understand where LLMs can be applied, an experimentation to understand where MCPs can be applied, where agents can be applied, how to use ambient agents, how to use different agentic tools, how to use web search when it involves agents, how to kind of give it skills, so forth and so on. So many conversations, so many concepts that kind of have been pulled out of the hat. And I think 2026 is where we really begin to cement what drives value. So with that being said, number one, Happy New Year. And number two, let's talk about what taste is. Let's talk about how taste can be cultivated, and let's talk about why it matters and where it can be applied in the AI products you build out in 2026. So I will be using my whiteboard to kind of help out, maybe bring these concepts to life a bit better, maybe to spell things out a bit better so that things aren't so abstract. I'll provide a few examples and we'll go from there. But to start off, the thing I want to say is Nishant Rawat, I think his name is, had a quote in a Medium article that he wrote from why taste matters in product management. And he wrote, "Taste is the knack for sensing what's beautiful, meaningful, or just right." ChatGPT 5.2 defined taste as taste is upstream from execution. AI can crank out infinite code, copy, designs. Taste decides which of those deserve oxygen, which I think is a beautiful way to put it. Because just because AI can build out code or build out designs or build out copy doesn't mean all of it is useful. The concept of AI slop is kind of that thing where just because AI can produce it doesn't mean that it's phenomenal. We've seen it with a lot of content generated images. I don't know if it was Coca-Cola or maybe somewhere in Russia or somewhere in Ukraine, right? People noticed that they had this advertisement that clearly used AI generated imagery where people were missing fingers or had more fingers than needed. And people noticed this and people were off put by this. So just because AI can generate it doesn't mean it's good stuff. Frankly, in 2026, I think most of us are going to realize that most of the stuff AI can generate is cheap, right? The code is cheap, the design is cheap. It's not super relevant until someone with some kind of taste, creativity, someone who's in touch with the domain or the world that they're in to where they can add their own spin of taste to it. Then you'll see where taste fits in when it comes to AI or the AI products we develop in the future. Another important quote that I think is extremely important, and I don't know if people ever really understand this quote. I've heard it repeated plenty of times since I was like in middle school, maybe high school, but it's by Henry Ford. If you don't know who Henry Ford is, started the Ford car company, Model T, not only the Model T, but he was also responsible for his main, I think, contribution was the assembly line and what we know it to be today when manufacturing vehicles or manufacturing anything really. He kind of came up with the process that we know it to be today. So super prominent figure, highly recommend kind of reading about him and checking him out. But he has this quote that says, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I think this is a great concept when it comes to taste. Reason being is because sometimes the masses do not know what is the best feature. Going by the herd mentality that everyone assumes would be the right thing to do isn't always the most sensible, isn't always the most innovative. It can be fairly just basic and just maybe focuses on functionality. Because if Henry Ford solely focused on how can we make faster horses, which horses only have, a top speed of maybe 20 miles an hour, I think. We probably to this day would have still been riding in horses. Somebody can correct me if horses go faster, but I think it's only like 20 or 25 that a horse can really go at. A car can obviously, depending on what kind of car you have, can go over 100 miles an hour. And as you can see today, cars are extremely helpful, whether it's a truck, whatever kind of vehicle it is, a truck, a tank, a bulldozer, a tractor. All these things are extremely helpful when it comes to vehicles as a whole. If we were still probably relying on horses, we probably would not be where we're at today when it comes to the industrial age and vehicles and how much we can produce when it comes to the assembly line. Things like that would have never worked out. But the only reason that we have vehicles today is because Henry Ford was able to take a look at the world around him, and recognize that maybe the next big thing that we can use isn't horses. Maybe it's something that people can't even conceptualize yet. Maybe it's a vehicle or some type of mobile contraption that can take gasoline or steam and be moved about. And I think the first car actually came out maybe, I think in Germany. I think so. I think the first car was designed by a woman. Somebody can correct me on that. I'm open to being wrong. But I think the first car was actually developed by a woman. But the way to manufacture these cars, these vehicles, such as the Model T, and the assembly of it was perfected by Henry Ford. So I say all that to say that sometimes relying on people can really dampen your innovative sense and the taste that you have. So I would put this, just to mark it and have it somewhere, is I would argue that taste equals innovation. I think innovation has two ends. I was not an English major, so don't come for me. But I think innovation has two ends. Taste equals innovation. The only way that you can innovate is if you have enough taste to recognize amongst the masses, and to recognize that maybe I can design something that they can't even conceptually come up with, but will overall be helpful. Overall be helpful. Sorry about that. for the greater masses. They just don't know it yet, but I know, and that can be my innovation. And in order to have innovation, you need taste. So, but why does taste matter? Like, let's dive deeper into it and really understand why tastes matter. And I wrote kind of a little excerpt to kind of jot down my thoughts and to really put this and cement it for you guys, so that not only I can understand how I view taste, but also maybe give you guys ideas on what taste is. Taste, or products that don't necessarily just work, but also connect to form communities or connect to other products for better productivity, can be considered taste, right? Having for example, let's say like Strava, right? Strava is a beautiful product where I believe Strava could see that run clubs were popping up all over the States, maybe even all over the world, right? And it would be really nice if people who were extremely fit, people who were maybe ultra athletes or just athletes in general, could connect in a very niche community of fitness, discuss ideas, show metrics, show their last pace, and the miles they ran in a week, and they can connect on these. Think of like Instagram, but for runners or extremely health conscious individuals. That's taste. It's a product that not only is extremely elegant and useful, but it also appeals to a community. No one would have thought, very few people, right, would have thought, why don't we develop a niche platform that's specific to a niche community of runners and health conscious people? In order to do that, you have to have taste and be able to have an ear to the ground, so to speak, and listen to people of what they wish they had and what maybe they can't even think of just yet, but based off the data and the feedback you collect and the world that you're involved in or the communities you're involved in, would be helpful. So even with productivity, having, for example, let's say ChatGPT now includes apps, right? Being able to use ChatGPT with various apps or tools, I think is going to open the world up to a plethora of other abilities for AI to do in 2026. We already have MCPs. We already have all these tools that's able to connect AI to other platforms. But what about the apps? What about Expedia? What about maybe N8N or Notion? All these other apps, excuse me, that I think would be helpful for ChatGPT to connect to boost an individual's productivity is also a sign of taste. What apps can be the most useful for individuals to use when it comes to ChatGPT? How can we bring that into our product to have seamless productivity for our users that I think it's already like almost 1 billion users, I think? I believe that's a sign of taste. Some people view it as a natural progression, but who would have known that ChatGPT would have included apps into its UI? I would have never thought of it. I don't think I would have ever seen the day. But anyways, taste doesn't necessarily have to rely on data, though. Like, user feedback is helpful. Customer feedback is helpful. Critiques are helpful. But just like Henry Ford said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. sometimes people don't always know what they want or what they need, and you kind of have to take that leap of faith to see what you can kind of develop. Most of the time, or sometimes, taste is simply intuition. Like I said already here, taste equals innovation, innovation equals taste. In order to innovate, you have to have taste. That's just the crux of it, of what I believe. Again, these are my opinions and my kind of monologue on how we can develop better products, better AI products in 2026. But it can be knowing what the user or consumer may need before they even know they needed it, right? Uh, for example, right, I'm gonna dive into this later, but the iPhone, the MacBook, in the very, very, very beginnings, right? It was revolutionary in of itself. The ecosystem that we know Apple or iPhone to be in, right? The iPod, that was Apple's biggest breakthrough of the idea, right? We had CDs in the past. I don't know if anybody remembers CDs anymore, or cassettes, right? Vinyls. We had CDs and all these different mediums to play music in the past, but Steve Jobs had this visionary idea, and it sounds simple now and obvious now, but back then it was revolutionary, of putting 1,000 songs into one small device. It was like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? I don't know if anyone remembers an iPod Shuffle here, or iPod Nano. I think Shuffle was the first one. But it was literally this small device that you can clip onto your shirt, and it could hold, again, like 2 gigs of songs, 5 gigs of songs, whatever it may be. I think I had one when I was younger. But yeah, these were amazing devices that no one would ever thought of. But again, similar to the Henry Ford quote, maybe if Steve Jobs would have listened to people and asked what they wanted when it came to music or music storage, people probably would have said, we want CDs that can just hold more music. But he had enough taste to recognize, why don't we just remove CDs entirely? Why don't we just include the iPod? So I'm gonna list here, like iPod. Uh, iPod is a great example of taste, right? iPod removed CDs just because it removed the idea of having, again, I don't know if you guys remember, it removed the idea of having these flips. You had these packages that contain all these different albums and CDs. Some you would burn, not burn. Again, I don't know. I'm talking to Gen Z now, but like you would have to go to certain sites to download music and add it to these CDs. And this was like before streaming, and at the time it was pirating. Again, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But it removed the idea of storing CDs entirely. It was revolutionary. So as we kind of move forward, I'll come back to the Steve Jobs Apple ecosystem again, because I believe it is a very important point. But innovation itself comes from intuition. It comes from seeing a target that no one else sees and being able to create a product that hits that target on the bullseye and hearing the praises that come from it. No one else cares about CDs anymore. Everyone cares about an iPod, or at the time everyone cares about an iPod. You could care less about having going to Blockbuster anymore when it existed. Now you just have Netflix. Someone saw a market. Blockbuster is another example. Someone saw a market and had enough taste to think, why don't we just remove the entire store altogether? Going to a store to buy movies can be cumbersome. You got to go into your car. You have to drive who knows how long. Also, there's late fees involved. Why don't we just remove the brick and mortar store altogether? And as long as people subscribe, they can get whatever movie they want. So again, another example of taste is Netflix recognized, hey, why don't we just remove Blockbuster? And again, they didn't necessarily remove Blockbuster like as a whole, but the idea was to remove the late fees. Just like iPod didn't remove CDs as a whole, the idea was to remove the idea of lugging these packages of CDs to wherever you went in your car or at home. It was making things more convenient and scaling things down versus, adding more. Netflix is a good example. So they hit a target that no one else can see, both Steve Jobs and the founder of Netflix. You could also say Amazon removed. At first, I think it was, I guess, like the idea for bookstores, even though bookstores still exist. If you're gonna buy a book, most people just say you can find it on Amazon. If you want to get a audiobook, maybe you might use your iPhone and use the audiobook option or app there. And again, this is what I'm saying. In order to have these revolutionary things, iPod, revolutionary, Netflix, revolutionary, Amazon, revolutionary, you need to have taste. You need to be able to take a look at the world and understand, okay, it's doing this, but what if we kind of did something like this? It sounds scary. It sounds risky. It also sounds kind of complex because no one's ever done it. But what's the worst that can happen besides it just failing? And we'll get to the concept of failure in a bit. But the idea is that in order also to have taste, you have to fail multiple times, right? You have to fail. Failure builds, my writing is terrible, taste. Reason being is because the more iterations that you do, the first iteration, second iteration, third iteration, you put them out there and people might hate it. People might hate it at first. People might say this, maybe the first car that Henry Ford created, they might say this car sucks. I hate it. I'd rather go take my horse. But it's useful feedback, right? This builds your taste as well. You shouldn't always rely on the mass amount of feedback. You should still include your own intuition, but the feedback is helpful, right? Because it tells you what people dislike, right? And then based off of that, you could then probably incorporate in a mix of what people do like, plus what they may not have even realized they needed, but they enjoy. It's a mixture of things. And this is why I said taste in of itself is abstract. It's not something that you can just have. It's not something that you can always just be born with. Sometimes you do have to cultivate it. Sometimes you do have to build it and let it mature before you can figure out what works and what doesn't. So moving on, to give a tangible example of what taste is, think of the iPhone and how Steve Jobs primarily formulated Apple products and its ecosystem as we know it today. Technologically, the iPhone's hardware is subpar compared to Android's operating system. I think most people know this. I know this was a big conversation like when I was younger of iPhones compared to Androids, Samsung Galaxy, which ran on Android, I think at the time. I had both an iPhone and a Samsung Galaxy. And even with me being like an engineer or a techie, I still kind of prefer an iPhone. Where the iPhone wins is that while Android made it a point to accommodate to users that are technologically literate, Apple decided to accommodate to the everyday man, so to speak, the everyday person. So let's kind of remove some of these examples here. I think we kind of already, you guys got the idea of mainly what I'm trying to say. We're going to keep taste equals innovation, innovation equals taste there. But let's kind of make a comparison real quick. And what we're going to compare is Apple versus Android. So, number one, Apple appealed to everyone. And I know what you're asking. How does Apple appeal to everyone? It was made for everybody. It wasn't as, not that it was intimidating, but the Android operating system, and I think there was Raspberry Pi, I think was Android, or maybe it was used by Android. I can't remember. Raspberry Pi was something that I think Android ran on or could run on. And then there was Android for Everyone, I think, which was like these developer toolkits, right? That people could use and develop on top of Android to add to like this open source ecosystem, which Apple is very much closed source. The iOS, very, very much closed source. It's not open to everyone. So Android by default was meant for the technologically literate, while Apple was just meant for someone who wanted to have something with a mix of functionality, but with this aesthetic taste. So Android was for the tech, tech literate. So Apple decided to optimize for, let's do ease of access, meaning anyone can use a iPhone. And what Apple does surprisingly well is making the navigation of the iPhone super simple, super easy, and very, yeah, I guess simple is the best word. Super simple and super easy. My grandmother, 72, 71 years old, has an iPhone. She didn't start off with an iPhone, mind you. I remember she had a pager. I remember she had a flip phone. I think it was a Samsung Razr when I was younger. But even her, at 70 something years old, can use an iPhone just like me. So the ease of access to, and I think she had an Android prior to that, and she greatly prefers an iPhone. For whatever reason, she just believes aesthetically it's more useful, it's easier to use. Yeah, I didn't collect any data as to what other talking points she had, but I know for a fact overall that she prefers iPhones over any kind of Samsung or Android kind of product. So Apple decided to optimize for ease of access over the technologically superior. And I think this should be taken as a lesson that when it comes to building AI products in 2026, the tech is cool, but you want the ease of access to get at the masses. Now, both technologically superior and or technological superiority and ease of access both have their avenues. I think they're both equal. Both are needed, right? There's one party that wants the technologically complex items, and then there's the others that look, I just need a phone, period. But I think what the job will be for most engineers and most developers, even product managers coming into 2026 is, can you develop enough taste to understand which avenue your market is looking for? Are they looking for something that's really niche and technological and specific and detailed and maybe has some complexities to it? Or are you just looking to provide a product that anyone can use? Are you looking to build something that is on the Android side of only being meant for a certain community, or a certain community can have the ability to, if they have the knowledge, have the ability to tinker with it? Or are you in the community of Apple where it's like, we don't want people to tinker with it. We kind of know what they want just because of what we know our user base is. And we can understand like, okay, they just want something that has a little bit of taste, but is functional. There's this very serious take that Apple began to lose its pinnacle of taste once Steve Jobs passed, which I do firmly agree. Where I think it's Tim Cook who is still the CEO of Apple as we speak, but the amount of innovation and design that was done with Apple, again, was innovative. It was revolutionary. I mean, if you think about it, in the iPhone, right? I think Steve Jobs hired Johnny Ive. I think his name is a British, I think he was an industrial designer. I can't remember. But just the way the iPhone is made presently, the soft edges, the way the apps are kind of have these rounded edges as well. The keyboard, I think that was the first phone to really remove the keyboard, like the physical keyboard, and only include kind of like a touchscreen keyboard. Revolutionary, and kind of make the front glass amazing. Aesthetically, it was pleasing. And I think it's maintained that classic sense while becoming sleeker, slimmer, and just overall, again, more aesthetically pleasing. But they haven't really innovated anything in a long time. They haven't had any taste in a long time to where you're able to take a look at an Apple product nowadays and say, wow, that is beautiful. Or wow, I didn't even know I would enjoy this. Or wow, I never thought of this. I'm so happy Apple thought of this. This is amazing. Nothing has come out of Apple that has made you think like that since the iPod, since the iPhone, since maybe even, I don't know. I think the AirPods was like the last thing that people really, the last thing I can remember at least, where people were really like, wow. Or even Siri. Siri hasn't had much of a upgrade for I don't know how long. Even though in this world of AI and, text to voice and voice to text and real time or real streaming, nothing has really improved. And I believe this is because Apple has lost its taste. They've relied too much on customer and consumer feedback that they've lost the ability to simply take a risk and to design something that is probably out of the box of what users want. And they're kind of scared of facing a bit of ridicule. They're kind of scared of facing a bit of criticism or negative feedback. And I think that's why they're kind of losing, I believe, this innovation battle. So where can you apply taste in AI products that you build in 2026? I'm going to conclude the video here because I believe we're running on 30 minutes. But my advice is that when you are creating AI products in 2026, take a look at the world with fresh eyes. Excuse me. Take a look at the world with fresh eyes. Learn to ask questions. Learn to people watch. I know it sounds creepy. Very much on occasion, I do still people watch. I don't even know if people still go to malls anymore, but sometimes I do go to outside malls or just malls in general if I decide to go shopping. And maybe for like 20 minutes, I'll just sit and people watch alone. And not try to be in a non-creepy way. But sometimes it's just interesting to people watch and to observe and to understand what they're enjoying, what they talk about, what they're interested in, which stores gravitate the most people, so forth and so on. Maybe you go to the Apple store and see which things people are fanning over. Learn to people watch to understand the products that they gravitate to. And for whatever particular domain you are interested in, learn to kind of understand what your market wants. And then learn to kind of understand how you can create something that maybe they can gravitate to in your own way by cultivating that taste. This means you will have to be social. This means you will have to go outside. This means you will have to perform your own kind of field work, right? To get to understand people. For introverts, that can be kind of scary. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most extroverted person. So I do have to force myself to go to certain conventions or symposiums or networking events to really understand what people might need. But also, in addition to that, study fashion designers. When I was younger, I had this interest in fashion design, styling. I love clothes. Um, I love luxury wear more so than anything. I love perfumery as well. I have a deep interest in both. And I used to watch Midnight Studios fashion shows, Acme Studios fashion shows, Rag and Bone, Valentino shows, Raf Simons, Rick Owens, all that. And I used to just be deeply interested in how they came up with what they came up with. And a lot of times it's simply by having designers go out into the world, whether it's streets of Paris, streets of Russia, streets of Moscow, streets of Texas or New York or San Francisco or LA, somewhere in the Midwest, Arkansas, and understand what people were wearing, both in a rural community sense and in an urban sense, and kind of see if you can combine these things, right? Study architects as well, product designers. Johnny Ive is a good person. I think he's working with Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, as we speak, to develop some type of AI product. And again, Johnny Ive was kind of the main designer behind a lot of the Apple products. That could be something super interesting. Study industrial designers, interior designers, etc. Learn about these people. Study Steve Jobs, right? The guy had very little to no technical ability. He could code, I think. I'm pretty sure he could, but I believe like Steve Wozniak was kind of like the main person who really was the engineer. But Steve Jobs had vision. Steve Jobs had taste. Steve Jobs had the ability to innovate. And controversial take, I think Elon Musk is the same way, right? Where Elon Musk may not know a whole lot about rockets, but he knows enough to have, number one, the idea or the humility to say, I don't know everything, but I'm going to find the individuals who do know and I'll direct them in a way to get that thing of what I want, right? And he has enough taste, again, to understand, like, again, Tesla wasn't originally his. He bought Tesla, and again, that's another controversial take, and I'm not looking to argue about it. But even the Tesla as we know it currently, right, wasn't the original design. He had enough taste to understand how the car should look. And even with the Cybertruck, a lot of people will say the Cybertruck is ugly. A lot of people will say the Cybertruck is something that looks clunky. And I kind of agree. But he at least had enough taste to take a risk. And he's probably getting that feedback now and saying, whenever we do release another Cybertruck, let's try a different design. And let's try to see if we can get something that maybe is close to what people want, but still adding a bit of innovation, a bit of taste into it. But studying kind of all these individuals will give you a breadth of perspective on design and provide context on functionality versus taste and how to bridge the two together. Once you have a decent idea for what to develop, begin using code assistant tools immediately, such as Lovable, Cursor, Firebase, ChatGPT Codex, Claude Code, etc., and begin developing a prototype immediately. Success loves speed. So the quicker you can create, the more luck you will have in your own product development journey. To sum it all up, you can learn how to have taste. You can learn how to develop a knack for understanding not only what people want, but how to give something to people, and how to hit maybe, so to speak, that bullseye that people want and get the praises from it. There was a quote, I don't know if it was from Albert Einstein or maybe it was from someone else, but it was kind of like a genius can, or a smart person can hit a target right on the bullseye. I'm probably butchering this, right? A smart person can hit a target right on the bullseye, right? But a genius can hit a target on the bullseye that no one else can see. A genius, or I would say an innovator, a visionary, can see the can see what's possible behind all the fog and begin building something as they go without having or without people understanding the clear vision of what they're trying to conclude out of that. That's where taste and innovation comes in, and they work hand in hand. So with that being said, I'm going to end it there for my own monologue and me putting my idea in philosophy and ideas out there. I hope everyone has a great new year. I hope everyone has a great 2026. I want to hear and see and know all the cool AI products people are going to create. And I want to see how they put their own spin of taste into these products. Feel free to comment whether you think I'm wrong, whether you think I'm a complete idiot, whether I don't know what I'm talking about. Two book recommendations is both the biographies of Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. Highly recommend checking those out and reading those and kind of understanding how they developed and what it took for them in their life to develop their own sense of taste. And with that being said, bye-bye.